Welcome to Get Wed,
a podcast to plan your wedding by.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Kerrie.
And we're both here as professional photographers
and brides-to-be to help you plan your big day.
Each week we'll discuss a topic that you'll encounter along your wedding planning journey.
And with the help of fellow industry experts, we'll navigate this crazy wedding world
together.
Welcome back to Get Wed. It is Kerrie here, all alone for another solo show for you again this week. I can't believe that we are already in December. We put our Christmas tree up at the weekend. It was really lovely, and it's so cold. I'm still wearing like a scarf and a little body warmer here whilst recording in my office as the heating hasn't yet kicked in. So we're well and truly into winter, and I'm starting to panic slightly about Christmas, but let's not start that worry just yet. Before I get started with this week's episode, I wanted to remind you once again how you can get more involved with Get Wed so that you're not lost in between our new episode releases. Firstly, you can subscribe to us to ensure that you never miss an episode. You can do this via the podcast app on your iPhone or via iTunes. In fact, we're on loads of different podcast apps, so just give us a search and hit subscribe. I actually use Podbean to listen to podcasts on my phone, so you may find something similar that you kind of enjoy using. Give us a search and you should find us on all of them, but if you can't, let us know and we'll make sure that we upload over there. You can also visit our website, which is getwedpodcast.co.uk, and from here you can sign up to our mailing list so that you'll be notified each time we have a new episode, and in between seasons we might get in contact to share any exciting wedding related news with you. In the future we might start using that list a bit more for maybe giveaways and fun things like that, so it might be something to get involved with, and also we're going to use it to get a bit more information from our listeners so that we can make sure that we are always arranging our shows around what you want to hear. So it might be great to get involved if you want to be a bit more, have more say in the show. From our website, you can also find the link to join our private Facebook group, and it's in this group that we really get to know all of our listeners so much more. Podcasting is a really weird thing because we kind of put this out there every week, but we don't actually know if anyone's listening, and we can see the stats and stuff, but we don't actually know who's on the other end of the earbuds. So we love to find out more about our listeners, and we find that out by you guys joining our group, and you can share with us the information about your own wedding days. If you've got any wedding woes, you can share them in there without fear of anyone else being able to find out, because it's a private group. You can ask questions about planning and just ask for advice or share ideas. We're always on hand to help you out, and it's a nice, really welcoming, friendly group. It's quite small, but we're all very active in there, and we'd love to hear about weddings, of course. So if you're boring your friends and family and just want someone else to talk to, come and join our Facebook group. Lastly, we're on Facebook and Instagram too, just pages, so you can give us a search again, which is Get Wed Podcast on both of those platforms, and give us a like. So we always like to find out new people that way. Anyway, let's get on with today's episode. This week I've decided to talk to you about unexpected wedding costs. So when planning a wedding day, you are most likely approaching it with a budget in mind of what you're hoping to spend. Hoping being the operative word there. Chances are this may increase as you go, and wedding budgeting is definitely a topic that I want to cover in more detail next season after Christmas, because I'm not the best with money, I'm not an expert at all, and I think we need to find somebody who can really advise around these things to come on and talk to you in the new year. So keep your ears out for that one, and I will make sure that's included in the season 5. But even if you plan a budget and you're careful with your expenses, I guarantee that you'll encounter some unexpected wedding costs along the way. Today I'm going to share those costs with you, all the main ones that you should really be preparing yourself for, and your budget, so that you're not too shocked or surprised when they do turn up. So firstly, one cost that I was really surprised by when I was planning my own wedding was postage. This is such an obvious, simple little thing that you just don't really take it into account. But think of the things that you're going to be sending out to people on your wedding day. There's going to be, you'll save the dates. If you're sending them, it's going to be your actual wedding day invitations. And then after the wedding, there's going to be thank you cards and maybe even gifts. So think about all those little costs that will add into your wedding budget as well. Chances are you might not actually include it in your overall budget. I know I didn't really think about this when we were doing our wedding, but it's worth considering because it can actually push up the cost quite considerably of how much you end up spending on your wedding day. Save the dates will probably go out. You can probably send them out second class. But again, it depends on your envelope size, and that's the same with your invitations. If you've got a small save the dates, that's great. Then go on a normal second class stamp. But you might have to get a large letter stamp. It might come under a parcel if it's too thick. So you have to really consider all these options when you're designing your paper goods for your wedding day. Invitations, it's so easy to get carried away on because you want to include so much information. You see these amazingly beautiful designs online. You might want to include, little gifts in there as well, and it soon adds up because your envelope size is just going to get bigger and bigger. The weight's going to get heavier. So really kind of make sure you don't forget the fact that you're going to be spending money on postage. The amount of stamps I had to buy to send out our save the dates and our invitations, I was already having a mini heart attack at the cost of all of that. So, and it might even work out better for you to visit all the people you're inviting, especially if you live locally. We handed out all our family and friends ones to most of the people that we saw most regularly, and it was only people that really live further away or that we didn't see so often that we had to post to. So we saved a bit of money there. But it's just something to consider. So just don't forget about postage. And with gifts, you might, for example, I still haven't got around to doing this. I'm such a bad client. But I want to send a few gifts out to some of my suppliers because they're all incredible on our wedding day. So that's going to be an extra cost as well because I need to get those obviously packaged up and sent out. And I need to do that before Christmas. So suppliers who worked on my wedding day, please don't think I'm being rude. I just haven't had the time to sort it out. But when I'm writing my Christmas cards, I'm going to finish writing my thank you cards to my suppliers. I'm such a bad client. It's terrible. A second cost you might want to consider is dress and suit alterations. This was another one that shocked me quite a bit because you're already spending an absolute fortune on your dress. And you can listen to my episode where I talked about my wedding spending remorse back in season 3, I think it was, maybe season 2. I will put a link to that. It's when I kind of bought my dress and was shocked about how much I spent. But you spend so much money on that you actually, once you've kind of bought it, you're like, okay, right, I've got my dress, that's fine. But then you start going in for your fittings and suddenly it's, £100 here, £100 there. And that adds up. And it's not really a cost that you take into consideration when you're actually buying the dress in the first place. Some dresses might only cost, £100 for a quick alteration. That's still a lot of money. I mean, in the comparison to the price of your dress, it seems really cheap, but it is a lot of money. And more complicated alterations will cost you even more. So I was quite lucky that all I had to have done on my dress was the hem shortened, because if you listen to our podcast about choosing your wedding dress with Lauren, she mentioned that the dresses are always designed for really tall people because it's easier to shorten a dress than it is to make it longer, obviously. So chances are you're always going to need to have your dress shortened. But if you need more complicated alterations, such as the dress, if it's got a corset or anything needs to be taken in, anything, if it's too big around the waist or something, any kind of extra alterations like that will obviously cost you more money. But it doesn't just stop at you. So if you've bought bridesmaids dresses, for example, chances are they're going to need some sort of alteration again. Especially if you've gone through a traditional bridesmaid's dress from, a bridal boutique. It might not be quite as bad if you're buying something off the high street, but it depends on your bridesmaids, of course, and their sizing. Some might need some resize, taken in, let out slightly maybe, or even again the length. And that's going to be a cost that you're going to have to find a seamstress for. So there's going to be costs involved for each one of your bridesmaids. And then again, you've also got your ushers, your best man and the groom to think about as well. So we had that situation with our suits. Some of them needed their leg length taken up, for example. So you just think about all those costs that are going to be involved. It doesn't just stop at when you've actually bought the things or paid for the hire. There might be some other hidden costs that you don't really think about when you're planning the wedding day. Next up on my list is trials and beauty treatments. So we had, luckily, if you've been listening to the podcast, you've heard our makeup artist Amanda and Claire, our hairstylist, who've been on, and so you'll probably be prepared with the fact that you have to pay for trial costs. But if you haven't, then don't forget that this is something that will come in under your wedding budget as well. Chances are before your wedding day, you're going to want to see what your wedding hair is going to look like and what your wedding makeup is going to look like, and in order for that to happen, you're going to have to pay for a trial. It's very rare that I think you'll get a trial free of charge. So it's a cost you're going to have to take into consideration again. I think they're usually around £50, sometimes more, depends how many people you want to have involved in the trial. Because again, you might want to have your bridesmaids go through a trial. You might want, even the mums to have their trials as well. I know that Claire and Amanda did say it's not always necessary to have trials, but they do like to have trials with their brides if they can. So, and I think that I felt a lot happier knowing that I've had the trial beforehand, and I knew roughly what I was going to look like on the wedding day. Obviously, I had my hair and my makeup trials on different days, so I didn't know what the overall look was going to be like until the actual day. And poor Claire, I changed my hair idea on the day of the wedding, so she was brilliant at accommodating my awkward client requests. But again, it's just a chance for you to get to know your hairstylist and makeup artist a bit more as well, so they're not turning up like complete strangers on your wedding day. So it might be something that you're going to consider there, and don't forget to budget for those little trials. You might also want to ask your mum or your bridesmaids to pay for their own in that case. You might even get them to pay for their own makeup on the actual day, so that might save you a little bit of money if you want to consider that as well. There's also beauty treatments in the lead up to your wedding that you might forget about. So if you're going to have your nails done, you have to account for the manicure cost. Maybe you want to have a facial. You're going to have your eyebrows done. Perhaps you need to have a last final haircut, and perhaps you need to sort your hair colour out. That was something that I had to do because I'm terrible with my hair and I rarely get it done. And the colour in my hair had kind of grown out and had a bit of a stripe around my head. So Claire was lovely to kind of come in and sort the colour and the cut out for me for the wedding day. But again, that's a cost that I hadn't really taken into account until nearer the day, and suddenly the money starts to run out and there's all these things you still need to do. So don't forget to budget for those things, although they're kind of a normal kind of everyday items that you might do throughout the year anyway. In the lead up to your wedding, suddenly the money is a lot tighter, so you want to make sure you're still budgeting for those things, and they don't come up as a surprise for you. You might even have things like you might want to get a fake tan before the day. Always take that with caution. I don't advise it personally, but it's an extra cost there that you need to consider before the wedding day. You've also got things like DIY and decor. So these are things that I don't think people generally include in their wedding budget, but as you're kind of going through your wedding planning, you pick things up here and there that you think, oh, that'll look good on the wedding day. Oh, we could use that on the wedding day. And suddenly, if you were to actually sit down and add up all those costs, I bet you'd be quite shocked at how much you're actually spending. I didn't include these in our wedding budget, and I'd be scared to think how much we actually spent. I had so many trips to IKEA where I was picking up stuff, spending, £200-300 at a time on things. And I'd hate to actually go back and add everything up because it would give me a little bit of a heart attack again. I've had a lot of heart attacks in this episode, haven't I? But, there's all those extra costs that you don't consider. So if you want to make a budget for DIY or decor, then be quite realistic with that budget, because you'll probably spend a lot more than you're thinking of spending. Things like craft supplies for DIY projects will really mount up. Silly things like buying paper, sewing materials, sellotape. I'm trying to think of a DIY project where you need sellotape and things, but all these little costs are going to add up. If you go into the range and just suddenly start buying lots of stuff, you'll get to the till and be quite shocked. It was silly things for me. We bought like cake boxes because we had a wedding bake-off where a lot of our guests brought their wedding cakes, and so I was like, I need to make some cake boxes so people can take cake home with them, because we don't want to be left up with loads of cake. So I went and bought loads of those, and that was like another £20-30 just buying napkins and cake boxes. So there's all these little costs again that keep appearing, that out of nowhere. But you might want to think, when you're kind of taking on a DIY project for decor reasons, whether it's actually worthwhile you making it, because chances are sometimes when you're doing those things, it can work out more expensive to buy the materials. I'm a big fan of DIY things. I like to make stuff myself, and that's why I took on a lot of DIY projects for the wedding. But I do think in some cases I could have bought things a bit cheaper. So for example, the boys, we made paper buttonholes for them, and me and my bridesmaid Kerrie had a go at making those, and my bridesmaid Hayley actually as well. But in the end, I just wasn't happy with the results, and we didn't end up going with the ones that we'd made, and I bought them, which cost me quite a bit of money. But actually, I was so much happier with the quality of the product that I'd bought than I would have been with my kind of dodgy looking ones that I was trying to make to save myself money. But I still had to buy the wire to put the flowers onto, so there's still a waste of money there where I went out and bought the materials and then didn't end up using it. So sometimes buying from a professional who knows what they're doing is a good idea. But if you do like to tackle projects yourself, make sure you give yourself lots of time and that you're not spending an absolute fortune on things that might not work out. Things like bunting and stuff are good examples of this, because material costs do really mount up. We bought a load of material from IKEA for our bunting, and actually it cost me quite a lot of money, and I didn't actually do the sewing myself. My mum and my sister-in-law did it. But whether it would have been better to buy it ready-made, I'm not sure. So just consider whether you're going to tackle these projects yourself and spend more money, or whether it would be cheaper to buy them in from someone who knows what they're doing. Things like favours and stuff can really add up as well. So you need to consider whether maybe a favour is a viable option. Personally, we didn't do them because I do think they're a bit of a waste of money, and I don't think people really appreciate them all that much. Sometimes I think the best favours are things that can be eaten or consumed on the day. So if you're going to do cookies, maybe little cake pops, maybe a little bottle of alcohol, sloe gin, chutney, something like that. Something that people can kind of eat on the day is a bonus, because they're not going to be left behind. But the idea of doing like jams and chutneys is a really lovely idea, but I bet people just tend to leave them behind, and you'll end up with loads of them to use up. So just really think about whether that favour is worthwhile, it's something they're going to keep and get excited about, or whether it's just, you know, a waste of money that nobody's going to notice. That's a good way to save yourself some money, is just to kind of cut them out, because I don't think anyone really noticed that we didn't have favours on our wedding day, or no one's mentioned it anyway. So yeah, just don't worry about it. You also, with DIY and decor, might be better off just hiring something in cheaper, and you may be able to even borrow things from your friends and family, so you'll be really surprised at how many people are actually willing to help you and want to get involved in your wedding day. So things like jars for flowers, you can get people to save their jars rather than putting them in recycling. We use like dog food tins to put lots of our flowers in, so we just spray painted all those, and everyone was willing to kind of keep them out of their recycling for us. So you can save yourself a bit of money there and avoid any unnecessary costs by buying them. Actually, Russell's grandma the other day pointed out an article to me in one of the Sunday supplements where I think it's Tiffany's are selling a what is basically like a dog food baked bean tin can, but obviously a silver version, and it was like £95 or something. And it was probably even more than that because it was Tiffany's. But that just really made me laugh, and she kept the little cutting because she thought it was hilarious about the fact that we used all those at our wedding, and now somebody was selling them at that price. So I was like, oh, perhaps I should sell them on. So there is cheap ways to do your decor, and there are expensive ways to do your decor. So just don't forget to set yourself a budget for that part of the wedding day. Otherwise, those costs are soon going to mount up, and you're going to be shocked by them. And there's also hire charges and damages to consider. So if you do hire in some items for your wedding day, such as chairs, tables, glasses, crockery, you might even have those light up love letters, props, furniture, that sort of thing. There are going to be costs involved in the actual hire of it, so you're going to be hiring the items themselves. You might have to pay a delivery and collection costs on those, so that you're not having to do, you know, go back and forth and get these things. But then there's also a damage deposit that you'll most likely have to put down as well. So if something were to happen to the item that you've hired, that cost can be recovered should it be damaged and, you know, beyond repair for the supplier. They have to protect themselves in this too. They are running a business after all, so you have to make sure that stuff that they are lending out is going to be well looked after. So there will be damage costs involved, so just make sure your guests are sensible around things. Obviously with glass hire, there's going to be a broken glass here or there, and they'll probably work that into their quote for you, that there'll be some damages. So just take all those things into mind, that you might actually end up spending more than you maybe consider. Our big thing that we noticed when we were doing our wedding planning was napkin costs, and we ended up buying loads of tea towels from IKEA, which are now kicking around the house and driving me mad. But we saved half the amount. I think there was like £120 for the napkins, and I was like, I don't want to spend £120 on napkin hire, so I spent £60 on some tea towels. So that saved us a bit of money there. My next cost for you to consider is wedding insurance. So wedding insurance is a bit of a tricky subject. You might choose to ignore wedding insurance completely, and you'll get lucky and nothing will go wrong in the lead up to your wedding day or on the day itself. But for the less brave, wedding insurance is a bit of a must. It protects you from things like your venue going bust, a rogue supplier if you book someone and that doesn't turn up, or they don't do what they said they're going to do. It will even protect you against more serious things, such as if you need to cancel the wedding. This has happened before with clients of mine. Something's happened, they've cancelled, they may have split up, sadly. But you don't know what lies ahead in wedding planning, and so you may want to budget for insurance so that you're protected against things. Insurances can cost you from as little as like £40 and go all the way up to £300 or even more. It all depends on the level of cover that you want. So I'd shop around and use a comparison site like you would do with normal insurances, and you'll be covered in your insurance right from the point of paying your deposits until the wedding day. So it's a cost worth considering, especially if you've got a long lead up time between now and your wedding day. Some people will be planning for like 2.5 years to be able to afford and save up for the wedding as they go. So paying for that wedding insurance might really be beneficial, especially if you're dealing with newer venues or newer companies. You might want to consider insurance just to protect yourself if you're particularly worried. But I have known plenty of people to go through without wedding insurance. My personal opinion is that you should probably get some just in case, and that's because of situations I've seen in the past with my own clients where they've had to cancel their weddings. And your suppliers need to be covered too, and you'll notice you need to make sure you're reading everyone's contracts, because I know that I have a clause in mine about cancellation, because it's a loss of earnings for me. As soon as I book a wedding on a peak Saturday, I'm turning other people down. So for me to then have somebody cancel and I lose out on a big chunk of money there, which I can only do so many weddings a year. And although I'm just one single person, I am still a business and I do have to pay my bills, my mortgage. So suddenly for a wedding to be cancelled, it's a big knock-on effect for me as well as a supplier. So your wedding insurance can protect you against all of these things. So don't forget to consider those. Another option you might want to, another unexpected cost you need to think about as well is your ceremony fees. So this is something that I had literally no idea about. And for those that have been listening to the podcast for a while, you'll know that with our wedding plans, we decided to have a small legal ceremony, which involved just myself, Russell, and our mums. So it's just 2 witnesses basically at a registry office. This is because we wanted to just get the legal part out of the way because we were having an outdoor ceremony with a celebrant, but we knew that wouldn't be legal. So we had to get the legal part of the wedding out the day way before the wedding day. So we opted for a really small ceremony. We thought that would save us loads of money. It wouldn't cost us much money, but it still did cost us quite a bit. I think we ended up spending, I think the wedding itself cost us like £60-65 perhaps. It was just like a really simple half an hour or 20-minute ceremony. And then we bought 2 certificates so that we had 2 copies, which probably cost us, I don't know, another £10 or so. But what really surprised me was how much it cost to give notice of marriage. So we had to go along to our registry office a few months before the wedding day, and it cost us £35 each to give notice of marriage. So that was suddenly a £70 cost that I hadn't really considered. So it was £70 on top of, the rest of the cost. So we ended up spending like £130-140 plus obviously the certificates. So it's quite a big cost for a small wedding. We were trying to just do that as cheaply as possible to get the legal part done, but even so it was still quite expensive. So there's still costs involved no matter how small your wedding day is going to be. And if you're having a legal ceremony at a registry office, then it depends on the size of the ceremony, and that cost is soon going to go up as well. And then we also had the non-legal ceremony on top of the actual wedding day. So we spent quite a bit on the actual getting married part because we had to pay for our celebrant and everything that happened on the day. So no matter how cheap you try to do your wedding day, chances are you're going to find a hidden cost somewhere. And that for us was one of the ones that we were quite surprised by. The fact that it cost us £70 just to give notice was quite a hidden cost that we weren't really prepared for. And so we started looking into planning the wedding and noticed that this is a cost that we were going to encounter. So don't be shocked, that's going to happen to you too. Another thing I want to talk about is corkage. Now, we provided all our own alcohol at our wedding day because we wanted to save money and we wanted to be able to serve the sort of drinks that we liked. So providing your own alcohol can actually save you an absolute fortune on your wedding day, especially if you're shopping when deals are around. Like this time of year is perfect for buying alcohol in because there's usually lots of Christmas deals that you can really utilise. And it also means you can stock your bar with your favourites, and if there's anything left over, I'm saying, chances are there won't be. But at least you're going to drink the stuff that's left over. We, for example, are left with loads of Pimm's and loads of lemonade. So we probably bought way too much Pimm's and lemonade. But we'll drink it. It will get drunk in the summer, so it's all fine. But you need to be prepared with the fact that some venues and some caterers may charge you corkage on any of the drinks that they serve on your wedding day. Corkage is basically a cost involved for their staff having to serve drinks that they haven't provided themselves. So this can sometimes be up to like £10 a bottle. So imagine that cost if you're providing 60 bottles of wine. It suddenly is very, very expensive. Plus you'll also have your reception drinks, which will incur a charge, and the evening bar as well. So you might want to consider, if you're going to provide your own alcohol, whether it's actually cheaper for you not to do so, especially if your venue is one that does charge corkage. We were lucky that we had chosen a venue and caterers that didn't charge corkage, so you might want to check out what your supplier's view on that, so that you're not kind of caught out on this really, really horrible cost. Okay, so I've got 2 more costs left for you, which are unexpected that you should prepare yourself for. Firstly, I'm going to talk to you a little about supplier costs. So you may find that some of your suppliers are going to require meals on the wedding day. As a photographer, I'm always really, really, really appreciative if somebody is going to feed me on their wedding day. It saves me having to eat sweaty sandwiches that have been in my car all day, or having to pack a picnic, especially in winter weddings, for example. Having a cold sandwich when you're freezing cold, sometimes like a nice hot meal is just really, really appreciated. Again, it's something that gets our energy back up, and we're with you all day long, so a supply meal is always really, really welcomed. You might not have been prepared for that, and I don't I do tell my couples that it's always appreciated but not a requirement. We just need to know beforehand. Some venues, for example, won't let photographers or other suppliers bring their own food in, so they'll have to go sit in the car, which means they might miss out on options or miss out on things happening. Or they'll have to drive to get food if they weren't aware of the fact they weren't being fed. So just that's another cost you might need to think about, or have the conversation with your photographer, videographer, or whoever else is there for a large majority of your day. Sometimes the bands, for example, require food and beverages to be provided, so you might just want to make sure that's something that you know up front whether you're going to have to be supplying or not. And you might find that's another cost that you hadn't expected to be adding onto your wedding budget. Some caterers will offer supplier meals, so they might be cheaper than the ones you're actually serving to your actual guests, so there might be a different thing altogether that just makes it a little bit cheaper. So don't forget to ask your caterer whether that's something that they're able to provide. As well as supplier meals, you might find that you encounter things like travel costs or accommodation costs. So again, going back to me, because I can kind of relate to this as a photographer, I charge travel after about 50 or so miles from home, because it might result in the fact that I need to get overnight accommodation the night before, because obviously I don't want to be stressing about getting to your wedding day through tons and tons of traffic and missing anything happening. So it's just insurance really, that if I get accommodation the night before, I'm going to be at your wedding in plenty of time. That might be an option. That might be somewhere where you start to consider perhaps you should only hire suppliers that are within your local range, so you're not having to account for travel costs and accommodation costs. Okay, so our last cost we're going to talk about today is meals for the setup of your wedding day, the morning of your wedding, and also the kind of day after if you're doing any breakdown, kind of tidying away. This is a cost that I hadn't considered at all, but on the day before the wedding, when we were going up to the marquee to get everything set up, I went out and bought a load of actually, I don't know if I did. I think somebody else did it in the end. Somebody went and got a load of sandwiches and snacks for us to eat throughout the day, because we were there. It was a really long day. We kind of got there about 10ish. We didn't leave till nearly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and obviously we had to be eating in that time. So that was a cost I hadn't thought about. Luckily, somebody stepped up. Might have even been Russell's mum, I think, and turned up with a load of food for us all to eat, just sandwiches and things from Tesco's. And crisps and snacks, but that's food that is going to keep everyone going. You can't expect people to turn up and help you out with situations like this and not feed them. Everyone's going to get starving at some point. So that's a cost that you might want to consider again. I don't know how many times I've said that's a cost you might want to consider in this podcast, but it's something really important to think about. Again, with food on the morning of a wedding day, you might want to consider, I was saying this could be like a serious drinking game today, the amount of times I'm saying consider, but you might want to think about offering breakfast options for people to eat on the morning. So if you've got bridesmaids staying with you, your parents, for example, you might want to get some bacon in, so you can have bacon sandwiches, or a fry up if you're feeling extra extravagant. I personally couldn't eat much on my wedding day. I was far too nervous. Even like pastries might be a nice option to have in, and it's also nice for like your makeup artist, hairstylist, photographer, for example. You can offer some food to them as well, because again, they're going to be with you for some time. So just having snacks and food in for people, so they're not starving hungry before the wedding day begins. And then the day after, when things are being broken down, again, you might want to bring a little bit of food along to keep everyone's spirits up, especially because they might have a serious hangover the day after the wedding, if there's a lot of breaking down that needs to happen. You might also need to think about hotel costs. So if you're getting ready somewhere that isn't at home, so if you're getting ready in a hotel, for example, you might need to consider the cost of hiring that hotel room, and even like your wedding night accommodation if you're not going to be coming back home. That's another cost to think about that might not have been involved in your original budget, because sometimes when you're planning out your wedding budget, the only things you're really considering are your venue, the food, your dress, your attire, and it's all these little things that I've mentioned today that suddenly crop up along the way and take you by surprise. So hopefully by listening along to today's episode, you won't be quite so shocked by these costs as and when they arrive, and you'll be a little bit more prepared if they do pop up at any point, because you'll be a lot more willing and ready to accept them. I hope that this has really helped you this week. I'm going to put this into a printable PDF, so you can print it off and you've got those costs there. You can add it to your wedding binder. And then when you're meeting with suppliers or you're kind of thinking about your wedding budget, you might just want to look back at this printable list to remind yourself of things that might crop up throughout your wedding planning. Like I say, you might not encounter any of these costs. They might not be relevant to you, but chances are one or two of them will pop up at some point, and I hope that this episode has just prepared you for all of that. So thank you so much for listening along this week. I'll be back next week with another guest for you, and I shall see you then. Bye. Thanks for listening. We really hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Get Wed. Don't forget you can always subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, and while you're there you may as well leave us a review. You can join us for more wedding chat in our Facebook group if you just can't wait until next week. You'll find all the links that you need via our website, including show notes for this episode, over at getwedpodcast.co.uk. We'll see you next time. Happy planning!